Meeting to order. I think let's move, if everybody's okay with it, move public speak up to the beginning of the agenda because folks are here. So I want to open public speak.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. My name is Tom Hogan. I'm a volunteer with the East Hampton Friends of Football Association. I have other volunteers here with me this evening. Mr. Mike Burke, Amy Goyette. Ms. Goyette is the president of our organization. We're here this evening to introduce and talk about an exciting project that we'd like to actually ultimately ask your support on. I have a board that kind of shows the area if that's okay.
Sure. Yes, shoot. Yes.
I don't know if I think yours is fairly quick.
Yeah, I did send you a notification that I'd be recording the meeting with this camera here today, so.
Can you give just like a 2-second explanation about
I would love to. I'm Kathy Lynch. I'm the station manager at Channel 5 in East Hampton. And I would just like to use this time to answer any questions or dispel any rumors about the cameras that have been mounted here at 50 Payson. If anybody has any questions about the files or who's watching the videos or where they go to, anything at all, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Can you just tell us where they just...
Sure, the files that actually, so when this camera records, the files, there's actually a little chip inside the camera, and then either myself or my coworker in the next day or two will come along, collect all the chips, and we'll put the chips into a computer, and then we'll put a title that says what the committee name is and what the date is, and then from there they go, then the chip gets erased, and then the files either go on to Channel 5 for a couple days, and then also onto our website, so that if, for example, if a committee member missed a meeting and wanted to find out what happened, they could watch that part of the meeting. There's just been a lot of talk about it, so I thought I would come and just offer to answer any questions so that maybe people get more comfortable with the idea. Yes, Ben?
Can this camera be remote operated from outside of the room?
I don't
Can
think
someone
so.
like just turn it on remotely, or can these be, I don't know, streamed live?
No, they can't be streamed live. They don't have that capability. I don't have the broadcast capability to do
So you have
that.
to be in the room to physically turn it on?
You have to be in the range of the remote control, and so that all the meeting rooms now have a remote control that's actually glued to the table on a chain, just like if you were looking at a camera at Best Buy, just so that they don't get lost or somebody doesn't put it in their pocket and go home. But then I have the rest of the remote controls. So there's one per room per camera, and then these are also the cameras that we send home with people that want to do projects that come into the station to use the station and want to videotape stuff like, you know, the ice harvesting or art walks or whatever else is going on around town. So I do have extras in a box, but no, they're not. I don't give them to anyone because I have to pay $30 to replace them. And I have a board to answer to too, so that would not be good. But does anyone else have any questions?
And I also just wanted to clarify that because I talked to
Okay.
people, but
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thanks.
Sure. So, sorry to
No, that's no problem. So can you prefer this to be located anywhere particular?
Oh, no, you can put it wherever, as long as you're not walking here.
Okay. As I mentioned, my name's Tom Hogan. I'm a volunteer with the East Hampton Friends of Football Association. I'm also a civil engineer with the firm USAT and Associates. I assist coach with Mike, the Pee Wee football team in town. I have for the last couple of years. I'll kind of start at the beginning. At some point during this season, the folks began a conversation about the drainage situation at the football field, the existing field that we all play our games on. And if you've spent any time down there, particularly after a rainstorm or a few days after, wet time of year, you know it's very poorly drained. We believe it's for a couple of factors. It's the way the land is shaped, it kind of funnels down to that area, combined also with poor soil. So we think the soil has a high silt content, it's very compressed. All those things combined just really have contributed to kind of real negative situation. And it's the EFFA over the years has kind of responded in a reparative fashion, tried to throw money at this, crown the field. They expended great levels of effort and money over the years, but the maintenance of this drainage problem is kind of getting away, and we feel like it's deteriorating at a rapid pace. The EFFA, just as a little backup, supports the high school and the youth football programs here in town. We're a 501c nonprofit organization. Through voluntary efforts only, we raise funds that support things from at the high school level, including buses, jerseys, financial needs, and kind of a broad base. At the youth level, we support and provide the equipment, the jerseys, and then all the expenses related there, helmets, insurance, and those kind of things. So part of the support that EFFA provides is to provide some improvements to the field as we can. That all being said, we had thought about the idea of kind of citing or looking at the possibility of building a new field on the upper plateau to the west of the existing field, kind of where I think there's a couple soccer goals. They play Little League baseball up there. We practice Little League football up there too. We believe it fits. We believe it's a fantastic long-term, our kind of, our wish list project. Reality speaking, it's been brought to our attention, and we tend to agree that some attention has to be paid to this field at this time. So we think the negative grading, the poor drainage, along with mosquito-borne illnesses that we're all made aware of this fall, we think the time is right to seriously address the drainage and grading issues that we have at this field. So through voluntary efforts to this point in time, we've all worked together in kind of an ad hoc committee fashion to come up with a consensus of some of the priority elements that we'd like to include in improving this field in the situation where it is now. And we're at the point, I think it's safe to say, where we've kind of gotten to the point where we need to advance the design, the research, get a soil scientist to tell us exactly, what we're going to have to do to amend the existing soil, get the wetlands flag, get the survey done. I can do so much on a volunteer basis. So, although we think we have a pretty decent feel for where we're going with the cost estimate to do the construction, which we'd like to ask for your support as well. We'd like to start a conversation with you about helping us get going to the next step in terms of advancing our plans so that we can start talking to contractors and get real prices.
Any suggestions?
Is there anything so you guys want to have?
Because what I do is.
Yeah. So, Benjamin and Jessica have helped us understand the process, your requirements, helped us slow down a little bit and make sure that we satisfied all those. So I've compiled an application that I'd like to submit. That's okay. I think we hit all the elements in it. And at least it could be a starting point. 9 copies.
That's what they were actually talking about. Yeah, there's only 5 of us here,
Okay, I have plenty.
If you leave the extras with me, I'll make sure that they get to the appropriate absent committee members and any late additions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Basically, if I could go through real quick with you what we have. The introduction letter from the East Hampton Friends in Football talks about the FFA and the proud work that it's done over all the years in supporting the youth of East Hampton in football and cheerleading programs. We kind of talk a little bit more detail about the field conditions that we were just chatting about. So the last paragraph talks about what we'd like to talk to your committee about in terms of funding to advance our engineering, environmental science, surveying services, and then I wanted to talk to you now about this is our current estimate based on what we know now. So as we continue forward and we refine those elements, that number, we think will land within that range. So we have approached because EFFA is technically a private organization, albeit a nonprofit, we obviously need the buy-in of the town and the school committee. So we've approached the school committee, we asked them for a vote to allow us to do this work, and we have their support. I've included an email from Superintendent Collinsby. Amy was in contact with her today and talks about, the field of the future, if you will, versus what we think we need to do now. So we still have that support. We have a contract for professional engineering. This is the fee that we included all the surveying, environmental science, the soil science, and the engineering for the development of plans and the permitting of the improvements to the local conservation commission. The application itself, I have some numbers in there. The CPA funding requested, it's in line. I rounded the numbers in the letter introduction to you, but that's the range. And what we included is the EFFA is committed to contributing to the funding of the project. We have some monies available, and we are continuing with planning for future contributions dedicated to this project. So this is what we'd like to talk to you about.
So I just, not to interrupt you, but obviously we're not going to vote on this tonight because we're just getting it. And thank you for including letter of support from the school department. Are there any other, shoot, please.
No, I
I know you're going to have thoughts.
I was just going to say as a point of order, because it's not on the agenda, I think
Yeah.
we really can just take the application tonight and then set it up for an agenda item when we'll all have time to read it and can call you back in and formulate some questions and the whole process. I don't think really we can start getting into asking questions because it's kind of, as I said, it's not on the agenda for open meeting laws. So, you're basically just submitting the application tonight, and then it has to really be set up for a future public hearing, not a public hearing, but an agenda item where it comes in and we can sit and ask you questions. And in the meantime, it gives us time to at least go through this and have
there's a
our
lot.
questions prepared.
Yeah.
I understand there's a lot of information there, and we appreciate the opportunity to be able to come in kind of last minute and put it in front of you. The last two elements that I'll just show you that are in here, we explained for the application the 5 elements that need to be explained, and we're happy to continue our dialogue on those elements. We know some of those will obviously generate some questions, and the plans, the short plan set that you have in the very back of the set are our preliminary plans that we have been working on for probably 3 to 4 months already. So we have a good idea. This actually is a second substantial revision to the original project if you include the upper field. So the committee has been working in a very meaningful and progressive way on the project. So this is the plan set that ultimately we would like to bring up the construction level documents so that we can put them in front of the contractors. We have a very ambitious schedule that we're endeavoring for. We'd love to get out the construction. I'd say as soon as possible, but we would love to get out the construction in the early summer. But we realize that there are some things out of our control, processes that need to be undertaken, but we're committed to being as responsive as we need to be to any questions or requests for information that you have.
Thank you.
Anything on that? No?
No, we're good.
All right.
Thank you.
Somebody from you will, okay.
We'll you have your contact information in the application, so we'll be in contact with Tom. Have your contact information, and you're on the
Is the
East Hampton,
email?
who answers East Hampton football?
Yeah,
Yeah, the email,
That goes, I
to
generally,
you? Okay.
Okay, so that'll, because that's the only, there's no phone number?
I am Amy.
I didn't put.
I can give you my phone, it's 413-246-6178.
Thank you.
So we'll be in contact with this, the information you provided, and you guys will be able to forward that to the rest of the people that you have your contact list for, once you're on the agenda.
Okay. You guys meet once a month?
Yeah.
Okay, very well.
Thank you.
Yeah, the third Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, now to really exciting stuff. Did everybody get them? Oh, stop it. Did everybody get the minutes from last week? Or last month?
Yep.
Any additions, changes? Nope. Someone want to make a motion to approve the minutes from January 17th? Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Everybody in favor? Abstain. Thanks so much. All right, so the two things that are on the docket are things that Ben and I had talked about briefly. And I just wanted, since we're all here and we were meeting anyhow, I figured we might as well go over them since we don't have any other huge business to talk about. The first one that I'd like to talk about is our current CPA application.
Does anyone have a copy of
Which
it?
I think I emailed everybody, but we have extra copies just in case.
Yep.
I don't know if folks had a chance, I mean, I know we've had it for a little while, but I don't know if people had a chance to look at it. One of the things that we were thinking about adding on, which is something I think we talked about maybe last month or the month before, but some sort of inclusion of follow-up when we give someone money. So there would have to be in the application something about what the outcome would be, what we would be getting out of it. For example, that's going to be different stuff. So Riverside Industries just finished their Windows project, which we gave them money for, which is amazing. They sent their thank you letter to the city treasurer, not to the CPA committee, which is a minor nitpicky thing, but when we're trying to make people aware of what CPA does and the fact that this is taxpayer money that we are then redistributing through the community, we want CPA to be recognized. And we had actually had a conversation with them about giving us recognition. They said it was going to happen. I don't know if it still is going to, but there was nothing really in our agreement with them when we gave up the money that they were going to recognize us.
What they had last month, they had some sort of,
They had a completion ceremony.
when you walk in the door, they had a big check from the CPA.
Oh, they did?
Yes, it was sitting right there.
And everything. That's great.
But outside of that, like I said, nobody
Yeah,
You're absolutely right.
walking the door and there's a check sitting right there.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so we're doing. Can't do it.
So I don't know if I mean, you may know if other committees have any sort of
Yeah, I mean,
follow-up process or.
I guess, I think it's valuable in this because it's being sort of a multifaceted committee of all the whole city of, I know there's a lot of projects that have been on this one, like, people talk about what happened in the elevator in the city. What did we get out of it? What did we get out of it?
Yeah.
What did we get out of it, or what did we not get out of it? So I certainly think it's valuable, but I just don't know exactly what the wording would be to,
Yeah.
exactly what we're looking for in the wording. In other words, maybe something where we could have them report back to us, periodically, or
Like
90 days.
Yeah, or halfway through the project and once it's finished, or.
Right.
The way that other communities handle this is they usually come up with a grant agreement that after the money's been approved, but before it's been dispersed, there's a grant agreement that that's signed by the CPA and by the people getting the money, and it details the project follow-up or what exactly the CPA is getting or how the money's going to be dispersed, when it's going to be dispersed, and those types of things.
See, I'm not sure how we disperse it now. I mean, I know when it leaves here, it goes to the city council, and then the city council goes through our hearings, and then the full council approves it, but then I don't know who actually...
What if they don't use the money for what was actually voted for?
Right, exactly.
So there's no
Is there a
follow-up.
follow-up of that? And
They changed the scope of the project.
and I'm not sure how it even, I assume the treasurer, that's by the way, said the treasurer, that probably the treasurer cuts the check, so it looks like it's the...
So in a lot of the projects that are handled internally to the city, the money just gets funneled or just shifted from one account to another. So for this baseball and soccer field stuff, that just will be shifted from the CPA accounts to the Parks and Rec.
yeah.
And so there's no, like, the need for a grant agreement is not so, I mean, maybe it's still important, but how the money is dispersed isn't as important, but with the
Then there's a private equity,
Yeah.
part of it's
Right.
private, part of it's public.
So I know that Melissa spent a lot of time meeting with the mayor and Char?
Char. Jennings, right?
Yes. To figure out how they were going to disperse and when they were going to disperse, and they decided that they were going to do 3 payments of $100,000. And then Melissa was in charge of actually dispersing that based off of the reports that she got from the RSI. Of course, that was sort of like an ad hoc thing, and we were not,
Yeah.
the CPA committee,
Yeah.
yes, were not involved.
We actually had a guy come from the Squamish Trust come down and say he's gonna make a plaque saying that this land was bought by CPA funds.
Yeah,
Remember that?
yeah. Did it actually happen?
We have a sign in the...
Yeah, but that's been there for a while. That's one.
And it still has to be installed, but, and that's for, this first parcel that was...
That's the one down off Hendricks. or-
Yeah.
Yeah, what is that?
Affordable housing.
No, Donate's the one I think Harry's talking about. That's
Oh,
the
yeah.
latest one off
Yeah.
East Street.
Yeah.
Right.
And they were the ones that said that.
They were gonna put
But I don't know if
yeah.
We had the one on Paul Street also, Paul Street.
Yeah, Paul Street's another one, the
Two that I can remember.
open space there.
Borkowski or something like that.
It used to be.
One of Hendricks.
Before that.
The one off Hendricks, it's not Hendricks, it's that little street, and I can't think of it right now, they're on a blank on it. And you wouldn't know which the area.
Look up what each community has.
So I'm glad to hear that people are, I know that there's details to be worked out, but I think as long as people are in favor of it, Ben and me and I and whoever else needs to be involved can probably come up with some language that we could review at the next meeting. Is there anything on the application right now that anybody thought was weird, that we should change, that we should clarify?
I think on that one section, we need a minimum wage. So.
Something, I don't know, like, actually, I was really surprised this proposal that they just gave us is like the shortest proposal I think I've ever seen. Like, their comment, in their response to our questions are like half a sentence each, which is sort of nice that it's very simple. It's on the very last page. But also, leaves me wanting for a little bit more information, perhaps. So I don't know if it would be helpful if we gave people guidelines about, please write a paragraph about each one of these things. I really have no idea.
It does say here, be specific.
Yeah,
I guess what's
Right.
specific to the eye of the writer.
right. So yeah, I just didn't know if there's anything that struck anybody as something we should think about changing. I don't know, Ben, is it? I personally feel horrible making people bring in 9 hard copies. I don't know if it's like, it's because we don't have, we shouldn't be photocopying and that's too much of an expense.
I mean, honestly, it comes down to what we have the capabilities to do. We can do 8.5 by 11, no problem.
Right, but we can't do that.
But like,
Yeah.
the larger plans and specs that should come in, you know, that, we don't have those capabilities.
Yeah.
So what we do on the zoning board of appeals is there are 5 members on that committee, so we say 5 hard copies or 1 hard copy for the files and then 1 digital copy. And then because these days a lot of people,
I prefer digital copy than...
Yeah.
yeah,
Because
and
that's...
then if people want to print it out, they can print it out. If they don't want to print it out, you know, they can contact me and I'll have a copy for them that I can print out, you know, the reduced size. So we could,
Are people okay with that? Not getting
I'd rather have electronically.
Still viable and what's not.
Very-
Right.
I highly.
And if, you know, for some reason, someone wants a, right, I'm sure then if they have to, I do like that they have to submit one hard copy.
Yeah.
yeah, because we
And
did
then if somebody feels more
Yeah.
comfortable with
Yeah.
a particular project, there's one back and forth, you can get a hard copy, but I think 9% of the time, I think it'll work just as well, if not better.
We need to have a check-in. The plan is.
All right, well, if anything comes up, obviously we're going to be working on this for a little while. So the next thing is, I don't know if you want to first look at this. This is again just something proposing. We don't have any sort of governing rules or anything for CPA that I know of. So I sent you guys all the planning board governing rules. Obviously, there's a bunch of stuff in the planning board's ones that are not at all applicable to what we do. But I was thinking of using it as a guideline. I don't know if people feel like we need to have governing rules. I know this committee has operated for a gazillion years without them, but yeah, ethics, code of ethics, maybe. I don't know.
I
Shoot.
discovered this week that actually in the general
Are we required to?
ordinances of the city have a section devoted to the CPA.
Oh,
So just to keep that in mind, there are some rules that are already,
that already exists.
Some are,
and that, you know, it talks about who the membership is, what the duties of the committee are,
Oh, great.
requirement for quorum and cost estimates. So I don't know if that covers it, and I'm sorry I didn't send it to everyone.
Was that on the East Hampton general rules or general law?
Yeah, it's the general
Yeah, I was
ordinances.
looking at that the other night.
Yeah,
It's right on the line.
yep, right on the city's homepage.
I think it could be expanded though, and
Yeah.
certainly I think we could use I think all boards should have a code of ethics, just so people are aware of
Yeah.
what open meeting laws are, stuff like
Yeah.
that. And, so certainly maybe we could take both, take what currently exists, take the planning board, see if we could come up with
Yeah.
Come up with something?
specific.
Okay.
So I'm sure there's things here in the planning board that's good.
Are you guys comfortable with me taking a
Sure,
step ahead and bringing it in? Is that okay?
Taking enough copies of it, you can,
Great. And can you
this
send
is
me
good, we
that?
just put it on you.
That's fine. That's why I'm here. Thank you.
One thing I did want to
Yes,
note
please.
was reading that, the people who went to the Northampton CPA training the other month, heard Stuart talk about how there's in CPA enabling legislation, it says quorum is a majority, and then it's a majority
Is that
vote to do business. Ours specifically say that it's a quorum is the majority, and a majority of the total membership is required.
for somebody who's trying to rent
I brought that up to Jessica. I called her up and told her, I said, I found this online. I said, when does a state law override a municipal, you know, like the autonomy standard?
Yeah.
Well, in
With
this,
their law, what takes preference?
Precedents, yeah.
I would say that our law, because this is the specific enabling legislation for this
I
CPA,
believe the ordinance,
and this is more clear than the one that's in the
Yeah.
state law, which is sort of unclear. So this clarifies the state law for this CPA.
Yeah, but the only trouble with this is, if you go by this law, for the town law, if you don't have a quorum there, or everybody there, you're not gonna be able to vote anymore.
Right.
well, no, what it says, Harry, I think, is obviously you always need a quorum. What they're saying is, before something can pass, if we have 9 active members, you know, even if you had a 6-person quorum, you still need 5
Yeah, that's not.
5 affirmative votes to pass the item.
Right.
Right, because the way the Northampton CPA works.
That's how the city council.
If they have 5, if they're 9-member CPA, if 5 members show up, they have a quorum, and then if they're voting on something, they only need 3 members of the
Existing
of the people that showed up to
Yeah.
vote. Whereas our rules would say we would need a unanimous vote of the 5 members here.
city parcels and
Right.
brownfield issues on every street
I was under the impression that you needed everybody,
that are
which is
developers on.
No.
very difficult to do.
You need to make the vote.
Yeah.
No.
No.
Okay.
All right, so I'll do it, merging the existing city with the planning board. And
Yeah, they're still trying to figure out how programming.
And if you want, I can send you a digital version of that. If that's
Do you want to, Ben, talk really quickly about some of the highlights from the CPA thing we went to Northampton?
Sure.
Just a quick overview for folks who don't know.
Actually, so Ed and Dan were not present. So basically, Stuart Saginaw, he's the executive director of the Community Preservation Coalition. It's the state level coalition of CPAs. We pay dues to this organization every year, and as such we're entitled to a certain amount of service from them for clarification of laws. We've gone to them, I've gone to them a few times to get clarification about, the boiler project, whether or not that was fundable, and some other things along the way. So Stuart basically gave us a rundown of the recent legislation changes at the state level. That the big one that everyone's already aware of is that we can now fund recreation projects. And what's allowed for funding under recreation projects. And we went into some more detail than I'm going to go into. He also mentioned that as far as the state match goes, when the program started, there was a 100% match from what the CPAs collected in local revenue, and there was a 100% match with the state. Over the years, that's gone down. Last year, I believe East Hampton got a 22% match from the state. And he explained where that money comes from, which most don't know. It comes from every time something's filed at the registry. Of the $75 registration fee, $20 goes into a fund that's then at the end of that fiscal year distributed to all of the CPA communities, and it's split by some really complex formula depending on what your tax rates are.
Let's cut that too, Ben, hasn't it been that more and more cities and towns have adopted it, therefore there's more people
Yeah,
taking
more
the
people.
slice out of the pie.
So the $20 hasn't, the $20
That's still there,
hasn't changed.
number of people taking.
But actually, revenues in the past, he was saying the last year or so, as the economy's starting to pick up again and people are starting to do more housing transactions, the revenues have gone up significantly.
So they're putting an additional 25 in the pot this year. They are! We have a budget surplus in Massachusetts.
I was sitting there and I listened to it, I heard what he said.
So
Where's it gonna come from?
as Alexis said, they're putting 25 million additional from the fiscal year 2013 budget surplus, which is expected right now to be about $80 million. So of that 80 million surplus or something like that, we're getting 25. The CPAs all across the state are getting 25, and then the rest of that money is going to other
half the time
projects.
you're talking
Rail.
Great. All good things.
so doing that might
So, yeah,
I like the idea and I agree.
The boiler project that we approved was actually allowable.
Yeah, I brought that up, I'm going, but he said you're going to do any kind of maintenance. And I said, well, how about the boiler at the library? Well, this is all over, I got something to talk about the library.
Okay.
I just want to make this done
so
brief and small.
along those lines, he made the distinguishing, sort of helped us to distinguish what the difference between a capital improvement was and a maintenance project was, and where that distinction is. And out of that conversation, basically any questions that we have go to our city council. They, I forget.
I know our first name.
Yeah.
The city councilor, the city solicitor.
The city solicitor, thank you. Town councils and city solicitors, so it goes to,
Fitzgibbons,
yes, Mr. Fitzgibbons.
my own person.
So any questions about whether or not something's allowable get referred to the city solicitor, and they make the decision that's then binding on our CPA. So that's sort of the process. Another piece that came out of that was with funding. The CPA is allowed to do a variety of different ways to fund projects. Traditionally, this CPA has funded things just, if we have the money, we give it to them. But we can do things like funding projects out of next year's anticipated budgets. We can make reservations for future fiscal years. We can bond projects that have to be paid back to the city. We can loan money that gets paid back. So there's a lot of different options. So when the CPA committee votes to recommend a project to the city council, they can also recommend how that project is paid, from what accounts it's paid, whether or not it comes from the general balances or from the individual set-asides. And that the open space set-asides can be used for recreation projects now. But I did notice we have a conflict in our local law, so we have to get some clarification on that. Talked about support for affordable housing, what that entailed. I'm not going to go into it. And so that was basically. And there's a conference that'll be sometime in December, towards the end of the year, that will be in Northampton. And this will be, they didn't have a date, but that everyone should sort of keep that on their radar. We'll send out more information when we get it.
Cool. So if there's any specific questions, we have a copy of the PowerPoint, so if anybody wants that.
I think I sent it.
Did you send it out to everybody?
I think so.
Never mind.
Yeah. I can resend it if.
But yeah, they're a great resource if we have any questions. It's a good person to know. Ben, do you want to quickly go over our preservation plan stuff?
Sure.
So we have a couple of them, right?
1 second.
That would be the Sacred Heart Church.
Can you please do 3 things at once?
I will do my best. It's very hard.
So that.
We'll get that airstream down.
It's an
Okay. So
It's not mandatory.
I don't think anyone got this because I just printed it out about half an hour ago.
As long as they get the design standards set up by the city, they
So
provide right.
I apologize for giving you information that you didn't have time to look at in advance. I don't know how, if people want to take them and look it over.
But why don't, I think we can read it later, and if you just want to maybe hit on some of the points.
Okay. The big piece about this is that you'll see on the last page I propose a timeline, and it's somewhat abbreviated. We're trying to have this done before the public meeting that would be the annual public meeting that we had last May. So we should have it again. That was the last fiscal year, so we should have it again before the end of June. The idea being that I'll do a lot of the gathering of the resources and drafting chapters, meeting with other organizations or outreaching to other organizations to get their needs, their resources, and their possibilities. So for instance, the affordable housing section would have current resources available in the city, the needs, like what are the needs for affordable housing in the city, and what are the possibilities for affordable housing in the city. We may get, by working with, there's a number of organizations that work on affordable housing in the city, so by reaching out to them, we'll get a lot of information that helps to inform our decisions when affordable housing projects come to the board, or we can then take that information to solicit affordable housing projects that meet these goals and needs. The tricky piece on all of these is sort of, once we have established what the possibilities and needs are, it's sort of how to prioritize all of these different projects, because my feeling is there will be a lot of need and not as much money as what we will have identified. So my proposal to the committee would be that at the next meeting in March, I'll come in with I'll have reviewed the existing plans and documents that are already related to these sections, the affordable housing, historic preservation, open space and recreation. And I'll start the process to outreach to those boards and committees and other organizations, and hopefully have some information to present to the board on what I found in the form of a draft chapter or two that the board can then comment back on. That the April meeting, we would really try to have some more of the draft chapters, and that we would sit down and develop how we're really going to develop these ranking criteria for each of the different facets of the CPA.
Just one point of clarification. Is it prioritizing each segment individually? You're not pitting affordable housing to open space or recreation to, because I'd have a problem with that. I mean, I think we have to look at each project, if it's going to the people that handle affordable housing and saying, what are your priorities for affordable housing? I can see that. And people that might be into open space or recreation, what are your priorities to that? But I don't want to start, myself, I'm just one member, I don't want to start pitting, because everything's fundable in the CPA, I don't want to start pitting, historic preservation against open space, or open space against affordable housing. I mean, I think then you get it becomes a little, just my own, I haven't really read this, so it's not fair that it says or doesn't say that.
It doesn't specifically say that, but that's a great question. And the intent was not to prioritize open space against historic preservation, but to, within open space, to identify the parcels that are most needed. So when someone comes and say, we have this farmland we want to get an APR on, we can look at it and say, oh yeah, that's one of the Conservation Commission's top 5 parcels that we want. This is a great project. Or we can say, you know what, that parcel's not even threatened by development. Like, that's so low down on the priority list, and we have all these other pressing needs for
Which came up recently.
conservation.
It's so protected that it's not worth trying to buy it. There's no one to build on it anyways. It's natural heritage property.
Well, when you come right down to it, I mean, how would we, just hypothetically, how would if you had somebody will say they're going to spend $300 grand, we'll say, on some property, some kind of, Ocean View property, we'll say. And then you got $300,000 for a football field, we'll say, just off the cuff. How would you go about?
That's something.
How would we go about doing that? I mean, how do you?
That's something that's
either one or the other. Well, so how would we go about funding that thing?
I mean, we have to decide as a committee, or really, the committee has to decide, and I'll provide information based off what I've seen other committees doing throughout the state, and what I think is a reasonable way to go about it. But really, it's up to the committee to make that decision how the committee wants to prioritize, and where we do have, the 10% set-asides for each of the facets of the CPA, those 10% are not competing, but the rest of that 70% that isn't, the CPA committee needs to prioritize how do we want to spend that 70%. Does it want to be equally spent? Do we want to just open for whatever projects come in the door? And so these are, now that the CPA committee is sitting on quite a big budget surplus, or not surplus, but budget, it's really time to, I think, identify these process and then do it in a thoughtful way with a document that really backs it up, and then can, if the committee is involved in developing these processes, then that will inform future decisions.
It will also, as you already said, help us go out and potentially look for proposals too from people. If there's a specific area that we've identified that we want to focus on and we're not having people come in the door asking for money, it'll help us know who to talk to maybe get those projects. Well, thank you, Ben. I know this is a colossal undertaking, but I really appreciate it.
There's an awful lot involved in this. I can't imagine so much. Something like that.
I'd like to do it in the office.
And brevity is our friend.
Yes, that is, where possible, I will reference other reports and say, here's, I'm not going to recreate the open space and recreation plan in the CPA preservation plan. That just, there's no need for that. So where I can reference information and take shortcuts, I will. So I guess, just as a question of whether or not this is something that the committee wants me to focus on with the hours that you guys are funding me, is really the question I have for the committee.
Me to do it. Put your time into it.
Yeah, because this is the CPA committee funds my hours, and it is a requirement of the state law, but whether or not you guys actually want me to do it is debatable.
More information is better than
I think so
less
too.
information.
Absolutely.
I may not like what you write, but I'll let you write it.
You can review it and comment and...
I think it is helpful because we do overlap with so many other communities. We're kind of the central focus, not central focus, but the central collecting point of all these different pieces. And so getting into one spot what all the other committees are doing and what their priorities are when we're the ones giving out some cash is great. Everybody else okay with it?
Yep, very much so.
Cool. Thank you, Ben.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Does anybody have anything else? I really am like...
Just one,
please go.
I'll just bring you up to date on under what we've been doing is the baseball/soccer that passed the finance committee is going to the full council. I believe a public hearing will be the next meeting.
Any kerfuffle in finance?
No, I think the only is there was some talk of the expense, the amount just for a study, and then if you fund the study, now you got to fund. Duke does that, but I think it was something just because the study's done it, you have it. What I want to make sure, and it will be with before, because I think of my friend here, Mr. Schuler, who talks to me about the elevator, or any plans that we do fund, I'm going to make sure that they're the property of the city, so that if it doesn't all go or is done in pieces, that it's our plans once we're done. So
you get something for it,
And the library is going back again this week because one of the other counselors wanted some direct questions he wanted to ask to the library people. And they didn't attend, the people from the baseball and soccer did attend. So that'll be at the next Wednesday subcommittee meeting, furnace item. So that's my report from city council.
Last night was on the...
Are you off the record? Do you want to be off the record with what you're going to say? You don't care? Okay, just checking.
Oh, hang me, I was at the Historic Commission last night. I joined that. I just can't get enough punch. So anyway, I think it's going to help us out with the planning board. Now that Rome is not going to be on the CPA, maybe I can represent the Historic Commission,
Double duty? Okay.
When was your official retirement?
She just came in today.
Today?
And said she was leaving.
She was
Just
resigning.
like that?
Yeah.
Just walked in and said she quit. I was amazed.
This guy have a 30-day notice.
Yeah. But anyway, when I was there last night, we okayed this proposal from the library for funds for an oil tank. Now, we just got through passing like 20 grand for a furnace.
There was not supposed to be oil, they were converting to natural gas.
But all I know is this.
Okay.
That was passed last night. I guess apparently what happens, the library is historic, so they make a request through the Historic Commission. Then the Historic Commission probably requests money through the CPA or grants them if they come before us. So I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but everybody voted for it anyway. No, I think we, especially Mr. Sparkle, we really grilled that guy about that. Remember the guy come in and said something about it was going to cause
An environmental
catastrophic
disaster.
harm or something
Yeah.
like that, and then right there?
There was,
But yeah, I mean, their whole proposal was to convert to gas from oil because oil is so expensive, and so they were overhauling the whole system. So there's no reason why they would need a new oil tank.
So I really don't know what's going on, but all I know is be
Well,
prepared
thank you.
because somebody's going to come along with a request for an oil tank for the library.
Okay.
That was passed last night. Now, whether it actually gets here, I mean, I don't know the procedure, you know?
Interesting. Thank you, Harry, for that little tidbit. I am bringing it up again, and I don't know if we can even vote on it, but, so as we saw, the video camera is on tonight, and it's on because Kathy turned it on, not because we turned it on, which is why we were allowed to do that. The one very vocal member is not here, who was very against the video camera. I want it turned on. I made my case last month. I got voted down. I don't know if people, huh?
You voted down.
Yeah.
It was a no vote.
But I don't know if people are comfortable, if we can, thoughts, please.
I would just say, I don't think there's anything, you know, like there are rules and we don't have too many rules. I don't think it's in that ordinance. In city council, if something is voted down, there's a time frame when it
Before
can
you
be
can
brought
bring it
back
up
up.
again.
I don't know if that's not there. I certainly, with respect to Mr. Sparko, who's been very vocal, I mean, I don't see any problem putting it back on the agenda, but I don't think we should vote until it's back on the agenda and everyone has their say. But certainly, you know, if you want to put it on the next agenda and give Mr. Sparko an opportunity in the meantime.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that he wasn't here
And in
because,
the meantime, we can check and make sure there's no violation of the rules by bringing it back up.
okay.
I mean, I think that would be a reasonable way to start.
It's a good point you bring up, because I know that with applications to the planning board and the zoning board, there's a 2-year, after
If it's denied.
a denial, it's 2 years before and it's called a repetitive petition. So, that's a very good point.
All right, well, if nobody has anything else, I'm going to move to adjourn the meeting. Nice and timely like. Still have to go cook dinner, thank you.
I'm sure he knows next month.
He knew about this month. He didn't tell me that he wasn't coming. All right, thanks everybody. Thank you for videotaping.